Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dan on Sports. The numbers are in. And guess what is the most popular sport on television? No surprise, the National Football League. The numbers are in for 2024, and 72 of the top 100 programs watched on television, NFL games. The number one program was the Super Bowl. 123.7 million watched the Super Bowl on CBS. That got a 43.5 rating. That means almost one of two television sets which were turned on were tuned to the Super Bowl. Incredible. And two college football games made the top 100, the Rose Bowl and the National Championship game. Here's a somewhat of a surprise, although I'm not surprised. Women's college basketball, the national championship game between Iowa and South Carolina, won by South Carolina. Of course, Caitlin Clark was on the Iowa team. They outranked baseball. Baseball had just one game in the top 100, and that was the fifth game of the World Series. We'll get to that in just a moment. Women's college basketball obviously is surging. Caitlin Clark has something to do with it. Of course, from where I am from in Connecticut, women's college basketball has always had a tremendous following ever since the University of Connecticut women's basketball team became a dynasty back in the 90s. I mean, the ratings are through the roof for UConn women's basketball, but now the rest of the country has caught the fever, and the interest in women's college basketball has extended to the WNBA. I think that's terrific. It's a great game, a loyal following. They play fundamental basketball. Not a surprise here. But how about these numbers? The national championship game featuring, as I said, South Carolina versus Iowa, won by South Carolina, made the top 100. In fact, that women's game outpaced baseball. Let me see if I could find those numbers here. The women's game came in at, I want to say it was 76. 76. The women's game on ABC between Iowa and South Carolina got a 9.4 rating, attracted 18.9 million viewers. That came in at 76th. The World Series, the only baseball game to make the top 100, Game 5, World Series featuring two signature teams, the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Of course, if the Dodgers won, they would be world champions. Their first world championship in a 162-game season since 1988. And they attracted 18.2 million. So the women got 18.9 million, and they outranked the World Series, which got 18.2 million. Now, baseball is going to be excited because it's the first time since 2019 that a baseball World Series game finished in the top 100. So maybe they're making progress. But I come from an era when World Series games would get into the tens of millions watching. Like something like 40 million watched the World Series back in 1980 between Kansas City and Philadelphia. And now baseball's doing cartwheels as well they should, getting 18.2 million. But keep this in mind. The national championship game for women's college basketball outranked the World Series. Now, there are several reasons behind this. I mean, you've got to really, in this day and age, be a baseball fan, an ardent baseball fan. And obviously I am. I broadcast games for the Hartford Yard Goats. I always have loved baseball and loved broadcasting baseball. But whereas baseball was once the national pastime, it is now an acquired taste. The commissioner has done, I would say, plenty to try and speed up the game and bring more action to the game. But women's college basketball has a lot going for it, including, as I said, it's basketball. It's a quick base game. You know that you're in and out in a couple of hours. Caitlin Clark obviously has developed a following, and baseball is trying to capitalize on that. Why do you think Major League Baseball made such a big deal during the summer when Caitlin Clark spent time with the New York Yankees? So you get that juxtaposition as baseball tries to build its following among a younger demo by tapping into women's college basketball. And I don't blame baseball at all. But the women's game is a very exciting game. It's fast-paced. Like I said, you're in and out in 2 hours. They play fundamental basketball. And now there's a following. There's obviously, if you followed what happened with Caitlin Clark and some of the players, there's this rivalry. So there's a lot of sidebars to the popularity of women's college basketball. But to me, that might be the story. Obviously, we know where football stands as far as the ratings are concerned. 74 of the top 100 most watched television programs in 2024 were football games. 72 NFL games, 2 college football games, the Rose Bowl, and then the national championship game. The Rose Bowl outpaced the national championship game. But you've got women's college basketball beating out the World Series. But that's not all. Women's college basketball beat out the NBA. There was no NBA game in the top 100 most watched TV games in most watched TV programs in 2024. So women's college basketball beat out the NBA and beat out men's college basketball too. That's right. The national championship game for the men did not finish in the top 100, but the women's game did. It's building quite a following. So those are the takeaways as I view this story. National Football League remains king as far as TV is concerned, and not just sports, as far as overall television programming. Why do you think the NFL can get as much as it does for those television rates? Into the billions. So no surprise there. Women's college basketball really having an impact, beating out the World Series, and one World Series game made the top 100, and beating out the NBA and men's college basketball. Some fascinating numbers. I will link to the story in the show notes. As always, thanks for following. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. And please feel free to subscribe to my newsletter and podcast. You can do that by going to sportscasterdan.com.